Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think everybody has had some makan. Alhamdulillah. It's always good to have some food, but as scientists say, when you've had some food, your body starts to process the food, it then slows down the brain. We hope today will be an exception, inshallah. Because we've actually come to the most interesting part, I think, of today's talk. Now we are not talking about divorce or death of a spouse or quarreling or anything. We are done with all of that. We now want to just talk about, looking forward, building up the more positive side. And as we said before, we'll be talking about both those who already have families, those that are married, those that have someone they want to get married to, and those that are not yet married. So the whole concept of building up a family involves everybody, inshallah. So now that this is you, I'll try and make it very, very handsome. Or maybe this is you. We need some color in there for your tudung. Yes. So that is you. You can pick. If you're a lady, you know which one is yours. And then matching shoes, somebody said. Handbag, okay? No problem, we can do that. Handbag. Gentlemen don't need anything. They just need their clothes and they are good to go. One big gender difference. When it comes to building the family, we always say start with yourself. And we've mentioned that before, the importance of building yourself. Whatever ideas you have about how a family should be, whatever dreams you hold about how people in your family should behave or will behave, inshallah, you must be the ambassador of that dream. You must be the one reflecting all those habits and behaviors. Many times when we have ideas about how people should behave, we don't see ourselves in that picture. But we imagine this is how my wife or my husband should act. They should be very supportive. They should be very kind, inshallah. My children will do very well in school. They will focus on their work. They will also learn about Islam, etc., etc., etc. And we hardly ever put ourselves in that picture. So at the end of the day, we are dreaming and planning for children who are not yet born, but we forget ourselves. We have to be the ones who start with building the family. Because in many cases, the people we interact with will be influenced by us. And even if a husband or a wife or a child is trying to become that person that we want them to be, if we are the opposite, then we are actually actively standing in their way. We are actively stopping them from becoming this great person we want them to be. So it begins with us. Even if we already have families, kids are already practically all grown up, there is never a time when you say it's too late to start doing the right thing. There's always that chance. Each day you wake up, it's as though Allah is telling you, you have one more chance to get things right. Now, if you are not yet married, or maybe there's even nobody in sight, you are still quite a long way from there. The important thing is to still keep building yourself. I remember there was a friend of mine who, after we graduated from the university, she decided to go back and get her master's. And some people actually told her, don't do that yet. Don't you know men don't want a woman who's so educated? Imagine a man wants to marry you and then you tell him you even have your master's. It's going to put him off. It will frighten him away. And when she shared that with me, I said, well, if a man won't marry you because you have a master's, then good riddance. You don't need him anyway. Because it's the truth. If a man says, I want my wife to slow down, then he's setting a very low bar for himself and his family. Because the interesting thing is that a woman's level of education or her interest in education usually has a big impact on the children's academic performance and their attitude towards academic work. Because more often than not, it's the woman who gets involved in the details of their schoolwork. It's just the way it is, and we'll talk about it when we come to gender differences. But this is how it usually happens. So when my friend was thinking about it, she thought about it this way and that way. She decided to go ahead and get her master's anyway. So she did get her master's. And some years afterwards, she did get married. And she's married, she's got 2 children. So the lesson for me from her experience is you don't wait. Allah decides when these high points or low points in our lives will occur. When will you get married? When will you have kids? When will you get that promotion? So even though we are planning for these high points and hoping they occur when we want them to, Allah decides. So if you are standing still and saying, I'm waiting until I get married to do something, you'll miss so many other things. So we always advise, don't wait. If you are not yet married, don't wait. You have a career to pursue it. You have things you want to do them. Things you want to learn them. If you say, oh, I've been waiting and waiting, all my friends are getting married, well, that's very, very distressful. We know it's distressing. That's very painful as well, to keep attending nikah after nikah after nikah, and that's when all the aunties and the uncles will be asking, so, and when they do so, you're supposed to tell them about when you're going to get married. Who's next? And everybody says, you are next. Sometimes it gets very tiring. But that's not a reason to stand still anyway. Once a friend and I got talking, what do you do when year after year marriage is not happening? And we said, listen, you do all the other things that you wouldn't be able to do once you have this responsibility of a wife or a husband and kids. Once you are married, you can't just pack your bags and travel. You can't. Even whether as a man or as a woman, you can't just go home and decide, I want to go out, I want to travel to so and so place for this program, or just to go and enjoy this outing. You can't. So if you're not yet married, though it would be nice to be married, this is the time to pack up your bags at the drop of a hat and travel, because you can. This is the time to actually spend some money on things you know you can't spend money on once you have a wife or you have kids to care for. There are many things you would have to give up when you get married. And I'm not trying to scare those that are not married. It's a very good deal. It's a great exchange. If that time hasn't come, then enjoy and explore those things. There are many men and many women who want to go back to school, who want to learn something more. But because of family responsibilities, they can't. So if you're at that point where you're still waiting to build a family, then this is the time to learn, to explore the world before you have to slow down and explore your family. When you do find someone, so there's you, and then you find someone, and people sometimes say, how do you find the right person? Well, in all sorts of ways. In a program like this, in a group like IDT, at work, at school, on a plane, you never know where you'll meet someone. There's just no predicting when you'll find the right person. So the when and the how, there are many possibilities, but there's nothing that's certain. But when you do start having the inclination towards a particular person, we would usually advise, run as fast as you can and go and do istikhara. Salah, followed by dua, where you ask Allah for His guidance and His preference for you. Now, many times people will talk about istikhara and say when you finish saying the Salatu istikhara and you make the dua, you'll get some sign, like you have a dream or something. If we go purely by text, you make the salah, you make the dua, you ask people who are knowledgeable for advice, then you take a decision according to the Prophet's advice. That was what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. 2 rak'ah nafila dua, where you ask Allah that based on His absolute knowledge and absolute power, you are asking Him to decide this for you, decree it for you if it's good for you, for your livelihood, for your life, for all your affairs. If it's not good for you, He should turn you away from it, turn it away from you, and make you pleased with His decision. And after that, seek advice, then take a step. Some people wait until they are head over heels in love. So if this is the young lady that has caught the young man's eye, the man waits until he's actually head over heels in love. Then he tries to make Salatu al-Istikhara. Or maybe it's the woman who is head over heels in love. And love, Nuru will touch on that one. This thing we call love, it's just a whole bunch of hormones rushing through our bodies and making us slightly mad. And I don't mean mad in a negative sense. Yes, slightly crazy. Of course, at that time, anything you say that is from some hadith will not matter that much to you anymore. And so as someone once said, by the time the person is saying, Allah, I'm asking for your decree, but Allah, you know what I really want. And if it's good for me, you know it's good for me. So the best time to start with your istikhara is when your heart is not that entwined. Where there's just we all know what I'm talking about, right? Where you suddenly notice this person out of all the people in the crowd. Where the person speaks and that's the only voice you really hear, even though everybody else is talking. When you start having those kind of inclinations, or you think someone is behaving towards you as if you have caught his eye or her eye, run and do istikhara to guide you. And after that, trust in Allah. So now istikhara has been done, and perhaps through one way or the other, the two of you have started talking and have started giving each other the green light. We are interested. We will then say, remember the purpose of life and the purpose of marriage. So that from that point onward, whatever discussions you have, there's a purpose behind it. There is a reason why you and this person are trying to get to know each other. The consciousness that you are doing this trying to fulfill part of your life purpose, the consciousness that you are a Muslim, and that above everything else, you are looking towards Allah, is what helps you stay on track during this period of getting to know each other. Because sometimes that's the time when there's the greatest temptation to put the cart before the horse, to try and rush things. But if there's piety, there's the consciousness, constant consciousness of Allah, then people keep their interactions purposeful. It's all about, can we make marriage work? Can we both commit to each other to be married? Will this work? That is what this whole getting to know you period is about. Now, some people call it courtship, and I will sometimes read or hear that courtship is not allowed in Islam. Some will call it dating. And dating carries other baggage with it, so I choose not to even call it dating. I prefer to say it's a period wherein you get to know this person you think you would like to marry. And how long should it be? 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? It depends, really. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the people. Now, before we went on break, we talked about being widowed. We talked about divorce. And even though I didn't ask his permission to mention it, but I'm sure some of you know, he got divorced some years ago. My first husband died some years ago. So I married him after he got divorced and after I got widowed. When I met my first husband, it took us a while to come to the conclusion we wanted to get married, because prior to that, we didn't know each other. When we wanted to get married, it took us how long to conclude? 1 month? Maybe 1 month. We deliberately pushed the wedding date to a 3-month window because we said if we just jump up and say we want to get married, people will say, so soon. Why was, some child is laughing there. Laughter is infectious, I love that. Why did it take us just about a month to decide? Because we've known each other since 2002. Since 2002. My late husband was his friend. My late husband went to him to say he wanted to marry me. So we've known each other more as colleagues, people who work together for the same organization, who work together in Da'wah, who have done some work together. And we actually had a very, very respectful big brother, little sister relationship. Was very respectful, very cordial. He always felt he had invested in my first marriage. So years later, when the channel began to change, so to speak, it was very easy to decide whether we wanted to get married or not, because what else is there to get to know? You've seen this person at work, you've seen this person at play, you know this person. So when people say, how long should you get to know each other? We say it depends on what do you need to know that you don't yet know. What do you need to understand that is not yet clear? You can't know and understand everything for sure, but you usually know enough to know, okay, we want to see how much further this can go. In that whole phase of getting to know one another, we still have to maintain the adab. We remember the principles of Islam. We remember the principles of modesty, of how we dress, how we speak to one another, what should constitute our conversation. We still know the boundaries that exist, and we respect those boundaries. No hugs. Oh, we're about to get married now, we can hug each other. No, you cannot. About to doesn't quite cut it. As someone said, almost doesn't kill the bird. You know how a hunter shoots at a bird, and the bird still keeps flying? And he says, I almost got it. They say, yes, but almost didn't kill the bird. So almost married doesn't mean boundaries have come down. It's the nikah that removes the boundaries and puts you within the boundaries. So we have to keep that purpose in mind. Now we come to the discussions themselves. What should we talk about? I remember once in the university, a friend who is not a Muslim somehow had just realized that Islamically, even if you are courting or getting to know each other, you can't do any funny business. You can talk, you can't touch. And she didn't understand that. And I could see her mentally scratching her head. She said, so before you get married, when you are getting to know each other, so what do? I said, you talk. He was like, talk? That's all? I said, yes. And even for some Muslims, they think that is just too much, to just keep talking for months. What are you talking about? And we say there's plenty to talk about. You talk about it before marriage, or you talk about it after marriage. There's a problem with talking about it all after marriage. Why? I know when he takes the mic, he'll talk more on vasopressin and oxytocin. When this fire of love is burning, you will do anything for her. She'll do anything for you. He will agree with everything you ask for. She'll agree with everything you ask for. Practically everything. We will move from this side of town to that side of town. Okay, yes, sure. When we come home every day, we'll sit down and watch football or whatever other sport he likes together. And she says, oh, I love football too. She just started loving football at that moment. Don't mind her. And so on and so forth. And we are not pretending at this stage. We are not lying. It's the hormones talking. It's not us. Don't blame us. People sometimes say it's pretense. I say it's not. It's not pretense. At this stage, you want to bond. You are not ready to quarrel or argue about anything. So if you don't talk then, the ceremony is done. Now you are waking up and going to bed together and seeing each other every day. This level, the fire is slowly dying out. It's turning into a nice, steady glow, but it's not burning much. And that's when you want to reach certain fundamental agreements. Why would she answer you now? She's now thinking very clearly again. She's beginning to detach from that tight bonding, which happens at some stage after marriage. She's beginning to find herself again. He's beginning to want to claim his independence again. During getting to know you period before marriage, the young man would ditch his friends. He doesn't go to their usual hangouts. He wants to spend time with her, or at least call her and hear where has she been, what has she done, what's she doing now. And she's also calling him to find out, where are you going, where are you coming from. When they are living together in the same house, I know where you were. You went to work. I know where you are coming to. You are coming home. There is no magic. So, I'm being very realistic. If you are not yet married, don't be frightened. You don't want the fire of love to keep burning. It's very, very distracting. We can't function when this is going on. So it's good when it cools down. Now you can function. So at this stage, everybody is claiming their independence. This is not a good time to start saying we have to come to some agreements about money. We have to come to some agreements about X, Y, Z, or how we spend time. The best time is before. So you have many months to try and understand each other and cover those areas. Then there are many assumptions we make when we meet people. We assume that because she's training to be a doctor, she will graduate and she will actually practice medicine. And maybe for the man, that's a big attraction. It would be so nice to be married to a doctor. Then she would always look out for me. If I fall sick, she'll know what to do. Our kids will have a mother who will exactly know what to do. It's probably a big deal for him. And so he assumes she's going to practice medicine when she graduates. But she has other ideas, like I didn't want to do medicine. My parents forced me. I'm just going to finish it so that I don't fight with my parents, and when it's over, I'll go and do what I want to do. Now, if he assumes it, after marriage, she then says, I'm not practicing medicine anymore. Ooh, big quarrel. So we never ever make assumptions. What is this person's plan for the next year or the next 2 years? Do they have one? They don't have to have. But it's good to know this person doesn't have a plan. It's good to know I'm marrying someone who doesn't plan too far ahead. It's usually good to know this person and to understand how they work. Because not being able to plan 2 years ahead is not a bad thing, if that is how the person functions. And now we are entering this issue to do with differences. For both before you marry someone and within marriage, you have to build up your well of understanding. You have to understand differences in how people approach things, in personality types. Now, there are many different tests online, personality type tests. If you just Google personality type test, you'll find many. You have the long ones, you have the quick tests, the 12-question tests, the 4-question tests, the 30-question tests. You have the old established test, the Myers-Briggs. You have newer ones. There's the one that ends up telling you either a D, an I, or S, or a C. Another one that has to do with cardinal points. But really, they are just trying to say more or less the same thing. That ultimately, we are all different in how we approach issues. I would strongly suggest that we try some of these tests, just to have vocabulary to talk about ourselves and to talk about others. So you might find someone, for instance, you are going to marry this person, and while you people are talking, the person whips out a little notebook, has a pen ready, and as you are discussing, where shall we live? And what about our work schedule? What do we do when we come home? Is it okay to bring work home? The person is saying, hold on, you said? Okay. Carry on, and then you start another sentence. Okay, wait, I didn't get that. For some people, this is very distracting and very annoying. What are you writing? Why are you writing it? Just listen. To the person who's writing, this is how I process information. I write, I read, I think. I want the details. It's not enough to tell me, oh, we'll move to Damansara. Hold on. Which part? What kind of house? A small flat with yard, compound, or not? Gated or not gated community? Some people want the nitty-gritty details. Someone else, where are you going to move to after you get married? I don't know. He'll take care of it, or she's handling it. It's okay, it's fine. We are different. So you find people who want details. You find people who don't want details. They think, and as soon as they've thought about it, they just do. You find people who want the big picture. These are the people who tell you, start the story from the beginning. And as you are narrating what happened, I was just coming down the road and I saw this man. Where are you coming from? I was coming from work. So as I was saying, then I saw this man, and the man said, who else was there? And the person keeps stopping your story, asking you these questions, and you are getting crazy. Like, what's wrong with you? I'm trying to tell you about what the man said, what the man did. This person wants the big picture. I find this personality difference showing when I'm having a conversation with Nuru. Because he's talking, he starts one sentence, he stops halfway, he branches off into something else, and my brain is still fixated on that incomplete sentence. He said it's a footnote. He has entered the footnote. And I'm trying to be polite and follow him into the footnote, but my brain is saying that sentence is not complete. So I tell him, sorry, please, finish that sentence. He says, which one? Sometimes I actually remember, so I repeat the sentence. He says, oh, okay, yes, I'm coming to that. Then he goes back into his footnote. That's actually fodder for a real quarrel. He says she interrupts him when I'm speaking, and I say he's not making any sense. It's fodder for quarrel if we want. So in personality, you find people who are different in this way. So if you do get married, and maybe you are planning a family trip, you will find if you're into details, you've got your list of things to pack. You are packing them one after the other. You are even, maybe if you are that organized, some people say it's OCD, it's a disease. You are arranging things in categorized way in your box. So you know where all the things to do with shoes are. Everything to do with tops. To-do section is here. It's all organized. But your spouse may be the person who just gets things done. Who wakes up the morning on the day of the trip, whips open the wardrobe, pulling things and flinging them. It's personal experience talking. So initially, I used to sometimes worry, he hasn't packed. He hasn't packed. And I start packing like the day before, maybe in the morning. And I find we're almost ready to go, I'm still packing. And he's packed. So I've stopped worrying about him. Like, don't worry about him. He'll just go and fetch things and arrange them, and he's done. Whereas I'm still thinking, what if I want to use that particular thing? Let me go and get it and put it in the corner of the box. So it could equally drive him crazy. Like, you've been packing for 2 days. Enough! If he wants to. So you see, there are so many things to quarrel about. But when you understand different personalities and how we approach things, then we choose not to quarrel. We can even choose to laugh about it. We can choose to try and explain ourselves. Because when I found I was always getting stuck with the incomplete sentence, and I had to keep interrupting him, and I would notice he would sometimes think like, but I'm saying something. So I had to start explaining that the way my brain works, I'm still stuck there. So you need to help me. I'm stuck. I can't hear anything else. So sometimes he says, I'm coming. Be patient. Then okay. Delete that sentence. Delete it. Just stick with the footnote. So differences in personalities. You have that. There are many other ways our personalities show, but that's just one example. We'll come back to gender differences now. We touched on some of them. But when we even talk about personality or gender and how men are different from women, we are talking about the average man and the average woman. And in between, there are people who have some tendencies in this direction while they are mostly here. Some people have these tendencies while they are mostly here. And as a dear friend commented earlier today, she said she has quite a high level of testosterone. So in many ways, she's very tomboyish. So even when we say gender differences, we are talking about the average. I know of a friend back home who, the best way to describe it, she's almost like the man of the house. She doesn't like the role. She doesn't like the fact that she's the one that makes decisions and follows through and drives through. She doesn't like the fact that her husband is so easygoing. No worries, man. He's got this nice, comfy job. He goes to work in the morning, he comes back later in the day, and it's okay, he's fine. He got his first degree, he's not pursuing the second. He would like to, but look, it's okay. My friend has her second degree. My friend has a job, she has a business on the side. And my friend at one time kept pushing and focusing on the differences and how frustrating it is. And I say, you've got to slow down and ask yourself, really, what's wrong with your husband? Is there something wrong with what he is or how he is? Because he's not the one pushing and driving decisions. No, but he gives you freedom. And her personality type, very dominant, wants to make decisions, doesn't want to be stopped. So I said, but he's allowing you be you. So it's a blessing. The other side of him is he's the kind of person, she says, you can leave kids with him comfortably. He will watch them like a mother would. You can trust him too. And I said some women are fighting their husbands, reporting their husbands to friends and family members because their husbands won't do what your husband is doing without being asked. I said, so if you want, you can focus on the differences and sweat it. If you want, you can understand that this is what your husband is. He's still very much a man. But that, I like my own way of life disposition, helps him. Because he's very devoted to his marriage, very committed. So when friends say, you're so committed, he says, yes, that's their business. But I love my family. So when we say gender differences, we are talking about the average. The average woman notices minor details. She notices how someone did their face, how this person did their mouth. The average woman is the one who will notice that a child seems a bit quieter than usual. A bit, not much. The average man, there are exceptions, but the average man doesn't notice until the child is really down. The average woman notices that the child's trousers are torn, and those trousers should not be worn outside the vicinity of the home. The average father doesn't notice, so he shows up at a friend's house with the child wearing faded shirts. You can quarrel about it, or you can laugh about it. The average woman, when she's upset, as we said before, will say she's upset and start talking. The average man will probably keep quiet and just want to shrug it off, let it go. So when the average man is doing his quiet thing, the average woman is very angry. I can tell something is wrong and he's not saying. And when the average woman is doing what the average woman does, she's sad, so she's crying and she's talking. The average man wants her to stop shouting, stop crying, stop talking about it, just go and fix it. And so usually men don't want to even share some kind of information with women. They say, oh, just make her sad. But the interesting thing about women is we have to flow through our sadness and then rise out of it. Pretty much without much help from anybody. Just our own mouth. We talk, and then we recover. So usually a man wants to stop the woman from sliding into sadness. Don't stop her. Just hold her hand as she's sliding. When she's done, keep telling her it's okay, sorry, oh, so sorry. When she's done complaining and talking, she'll most likely feel better and she'll be okay. The average woman wants to tell the man, don't sulk, don't brood. Instead, find ways of getting him to share when he's ready, if he's ready. In one book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, the author describes that as the cave, that men have a cave they like to retreat into, think about their problems, and come out when they are much better. And for the woman, he describes that sliding into sadness as falling into a well. So I have a friend who, after she learned about this concept and she read the book, she said, I know how to treat my husband. I know how to handle him when he's going into his cave. When I see him going into his cave, I run ahead of him. I go further and deeper into that cave. I force him out. I said, what do you mean? She said, I start brooding. Before he starts, I start brooding. I stop talking. And I said, that's not what it was meant for. You were supposed to use it to support, to help. She said, what? Is he the only one with a cave? have to. Gender differences help us support one another without forcing the other person to become more like you or less like themselves. The same thing applies to personality, trying to reshape this human being that has been this way since before they met you. We usually would meet the person we want to marry when the person is 20-something years old. For 20-something years, this person has been like this. So you either accept them or don't marry them. Because sometimes people marry someone saying, I'll change her. When we get married, she'll change. Most of us do not. We change a few things, but essentially we are still the same. Of course, if the habit is a bad one, it's something that goes against principles and values, we should work to change those as soon as we notice, before marriage. But not to marry them with the hope that they'll suddenly transform, that the extrovert will suddenly become more of an introvert, that your spouse who loves having friends visit will stop wanting friends to visit. If you force your spouse to not associate with friends in the home, they'll associate with friends outside. Or that your spouse who loves to sit down quietly at home and just watch TV or read a book or just chat will suddenly want to be jumping from one copy restaurant to the other and visiting people. Essentially, we don't change. We are usually the way we are, even before we are born. For mothers who carry children, babies in their wombs, they will tell you there were things they noticed about the baby that started showing after the child was born. I have a niece, a second cousin, who is very, very strong-willed. When she wants something, she goes for it. If she's not happy with something, she's going to say it, and she's going to try and make sure she gets what would make her more satisfied. Alhamdulillah, she has a good heart, so she uses it well. But her mother always says from the womb she was like that. She would make her mother go and change her clothes. Why? When the mother was carrying her, the mother would say, I would wear this skirt, and this baby will wriggle and wriggle in my stomach until I change the skirt. Because maybe she just wasn't comfortable, like this elastic is too tight or something. She said the other babies were more placid. I know when I was carrying my son, he was very, very physically active. There was a day I went to the salon to do my hair. I went with a book. By that time, my stomach was big, made a very nice table. So I rested my book on my stomach. And the next thing I knew, the book jumped. My son kicked that book. And I thought, okay, no, that's an accident. So I put it back. He kicked it back again. He's still very physically active and still doesn't want things resting on his body till date. So sometimes I tease him that I want to just rest on your body. He wriggles like this is too much. And I remember that day in the salon. So 20-something years after, you want to change the person? No. Understand the person. Support. Change what is bad, but what is not bad, leave it as it is. When I stop with understanding, I'll give you the microphone. I know you have many things you want to say. Then understand expectations. We all have expectations. We enter marriage with expectations. And even now that we are married, we still have expectations that sometimes our spouses don't know about. Unless we share, they will not know. Sometimes your anger towards your spouse is coming from the fact that your expectation has not been met. But if you haven't shared it, don't blame your spouse for not knowing. We don't read minds. There was a man who said when he got married, that was when he realized that toilets do not wash themselves. That somebody has to wash the toilet. Because he said throughout while growing up, he never had to. His mother always did it. It just didn't come up on his radar that the toilet needs washing. It's when he got married to a woman who came from a background where everybody does some share of the housework, father, mother, male, female, and she was expecting him to share in the housework, that he realized, oh, so somebody washes the toilets. He had expectations, and so did she, but they weren't shared until after marriage. Earlier on, I also talked about learning people's backstories, where they are coming from. It's usually during the getting to know you stage that's the best time to learn about their family background. I'm not saying go and carry out an inquisition and have your long list of 30 questions. Did your parents fight? Did they quarrel? How did they quarrel? Because you want to hear. But to just learn more, what was family life like? What was home like for you? And even if you're married now, but you never got a chance to ask those questions, and you realize, I don't really know, then it's not too late to ask. You can actually jot it down somewhere. I must ask my husband or wife this when I get back home. I must make time to find out more. Where did they go to school? What was school life like for them? What was education like for them? Is this sharing that helps you get a very full picture of your spouse? That hopefully when conflict arises or they do something to upset you, you have such a wide canvas of who they are. It's difficult for you to fixate or to focus only on the wrong thing they've done to you. You know what this person was like as a boy. You know all the games she played when she was a girl, all the friends, where they went. You know so much about them, it's easier for you to forgive and to move past differences. Then also be realistic about what your spouse can or cannot do, or your spouse to be. Be realistic about their situation, their lifestyle, their careers, their hobbies. When Nuru and I were getting to know each other, one thing I had to face was his schedule because of the kind of work he does. How often he would have to communicate with people, how often his phone would ring, how many messages he would get, how many emails he would get, how often he would have to travel. It was going to really be a struggle to try and keep up with such a schedule. So we ended up having certain agreements. He could travel, but there's usually a limit. His visa will expire after such and such a time. So there's time for family, and he gets to do that which he's passionate about. And stay on the phone as long as you like. But Cinderella, 12 midnight, who knows that story? Okay, so in this case, it's usually by Maghrib. Let the phone just keep quiet. So you find a way of understanding what is your spouse's schedule like, and how can you create time for building a family while still allowing your spouse to be themselves without reducing them or making them feel they owe you something. I'll pause there for now.
Okay, I'll work while it keeps working. One point that was raised a bit earlier is this issue of the feeling of love or infatuation and the role of hormones. Yeah, from a purely biological point of view, put relationship aside, there's a biological drive for us to survive and procreate. And there are some hormones that play a role in getting us together as soon as possible. Two hormones, most importantly, vasopressin and oxytocin. These two hormones, a little like adrenaline, another hormone. If you saw a snake in this room, your adrenaline would shoot high, not vasopressin, not oxytocin. There are certain people, if you start to develop a liking for them, they will get that hormone shooting up inside you. Not anybody. Just like with adrenaline and fear or flight or... And for those who have been in love or have believed this is love, if you stop to look at what you do, how many hours on the phone, how many hours text messaging, how late into the night you're ready to continue communicating, and there's no end to what there is to talk about. You ask yourself very simply, if that were to continue for the next 5 or 10 years, would you ever get promoted at work? Would you? No. How much would you read related to work when all you want is go back to check the phone, go back to check an email, respond to a message? You're not creative, you don't invent anything, you don't come up with anything new. Why? Because the moment you are no more engaged with work or anything, your mind is back to that person. And if you have any time off your hand, any fantasizing is all about the person. So it's not a healthy hormone in the sense of it being useful for your family in the long run. You will not be able to afford to handle the school fees and to handle everything. It'll damage a lot of your other relationships. You'll have no time for friends. You'll have no time for this and that. But whether you like it or not, it's there and you have to work with it. But it's useful to know it's there and it will go. And when it goes, you have to ask yourself, what's left? If all that brought you together was a hormone, when it goes, you're in trouble. So you have to find what really matters. You have to find ways of building mutual trust, mutual respect for each other. It is where trust and respect are strong that long-term affection and love would grow the way it grows between you and your best friends. That is not vasopressin. That is not oxytocin. That is really, I love my friend. And I'd like to be with him again. And you would want your husband or your wife to be that type of a friend who, when the hormones go, there's still a solid relationship going on. These hormones make us wear masks. When you know you're going to see her, you make sure your clothes are clean, they are ironed. You look and see whether your shoes are polished. You usually don't care about all of that. You brush your teeth if you need to. Some mouth spray if you chew a gum, something to make you look better than you really are. In a sense, you're just being like a hypocrite. You know, it's not the real you. But there's something making you want to be better than you really are. You actually go and memorize some jokes if you need to spice up the conversation. Learn a few facts. You're extra cool when somebody says something that insults you. You never lose your circuit never gets... You don't get short-circuited, you never blow your fuse, you're always calm, and you're on your best. But she's doing the same thing too. Just as you're acting, you're putting up an honest mask. In reality, you're being your best. The problem is after marriage, as you live with each other and the mask starts to fade, and you're no more doing all those things. What's left? So the reason why we're mentioning this is just so that we do not start judging our marriage as going bad just because vasopressin started going down. There's still something that you've been building. And just because the way things were 1 month before marriage, they're not so 1 year or 2 years or 3 years after marriage, it doesn't mean the quality of your marriage has gone down. It has changed. What held it together earlier was more hormones. What holds it together now is respect and trust. Those are the strongest glue. Those are the strongest bonding material in a relationship. Those are the ones which, if they are lost, if you have no respect for your spouse and you don't trust them, the relationship is hitting the rocks. So again, just so that we know the role of hormones and we don't think something, like there's a graph going down just because it's not as it was. No, this is natural, expect it, and the key thing is the respect going down? Is the trust going down? If the answer is no, it's not going down, then it's just hormones. There are things you can do to ensure the hormones keep at some level. Actions of affection. And I think we'll come more to... Okay. Actions of affection. Like smiling. Do you smile because you are happy, or are you happy because you smile?